Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very special episode of Bread and Circus. It's very special because it's our very first. Now, Bread and Circus, what does that mean? I'm gonna send it over to my main man, Jose Tapia, to let y'all in on a little secret about ancient Rome.
Alright. Hey guys, I'm Jose, and Bread and Circus is a figure of speech which specifically refers to a superficial means of appeasement. So the phrase is attributed to Juvenal. He was a Roman poet active in the late 1st and early 2nd century AD. And it's used in plenty of contexts, cultural and especially political. So in a political context, which is mainly what our show's going to deal with, political and social and cultural issues, the phrase means to generate public approval, not by excellence in public service or public policy, but by diversion, distraction, and by satisfying the most immediate and base requirements of our population. So it offers a palliative, in our example, bread and entertainment, circuses. So Juvenal, the Roman poet, used it to decry the selfishness of common people and the neglect of wider and more important concerns. This phrase implies a population's erosion or ignorance of civic duty as a priority. And in this show, I guess we're going to try to steer things back in the right direction by trying to engage in some intelligent conversation with the help of the internet and probably you guys. Back to you, Kyle.
Though we really don't have bread nor substance, nor are we entertaining. But we're gonna try that anyways. But in all seriousness, with this show, we want to talk about things that might not, topics that aren't covered by mainstream media. Sometimes we'll be really, really serious about this week's big news, big argument going on, and sometimes we'll just go off our heads some more lighthearted stuff, but things that are still important to us. So getting right into it. First of all, I'm Kyle Smith. Not that that's important. First of all, getting into it. First topic of the day: Pewdiepie versus T-Series. Now this is a big cultural movement going on right now, and a lot of people, if you don't know, PewDiePie is the largest YouTuber in the world, with 74 million subscribers and counting, which is 20 million more than Great Britain's whole population. And right on his behind is T-Series, which is an Indian multimedia company. Now, they only started, or at least on YouTube, about 8 months ago or so, and they're catching up. And there's been this huge drive to keep PewDiePie number one, because he's been at number one for about 4 or 5 years. He's been the face of YouTube, and so now people want to keep him there. But more importantly than that is all the context around this. So Jose, do you want to chime in on any of that?
Well, I don't know too much about the context other than the fact that he is the biggest YouTuber, and I don't know too much about T-Series except that they're based out of India, and they're basically a corporation. And to compare the amount of subscribers of an entire corporation's channel to a single person is, well, it's a bit different. You know, they're on different playing fields, but they're trying to equate them on YouTube, and it's all good fun. What I see is good fun. What do you see, Kyle?
Well, I meant like the accusations that YouTube is subscribing Indian nationals to T-Series right off the bat of an account being made, and YouTube pushing to have T-Series be at the top because India has a 1 billion population market, and YouTube and other companies like Google, which owns YouTube, are going so far as to fund Indian infrastructure so that they can develop that market with more technology and therefore more viable customers. Now, that's good for Indian nationals, but that's good for poor people. It's to have development, but also I feel like it's more corporate driven than actual want to help people. And so that's where I see the problem, is that it's so corporate driven. India might be one thing, but China might be next. And China is, well, not to put it lightly, basically a tyrannical government that silences their own people, dissidents, persecutes people for Falun Gong, which is basically a martial arts practice. There's plenty of things wrong with China, and I'm just looking at more of the slippery slope of all this. Even though, there's a meme site, and it's all good fun. I love Pewdiepie myself. Go subscribe to Pewdiepie right now. But I do see this as being a problem. What about you?
No, you're right, Kyle. Because it seemed, I think we're getting to the point again where corporations have incredible amount of power, specifically tech companies like Google and Facebook, and they have a lot of lawyers, and they know the law pretty well, and they use it to its full extent to make them as much money as possible. And if laws are more lenient in India or China, for example, and there is a plethora of customers to sell to, they're going to exploit whatever they can in order to get those customers, as long as it's within the law. Now, whether or not more law should be created to regulate that, I think it's difficult to say. Because, of course, profits suffer when overregulation is a burden. But we have to wonder how far tech companies are going to go in controlling what's on their platform and what billions of people see every day.
Right. Another thing similar to that, sticking with India, is Facebook. Within the past year, Facebook has been called upon to regulate "quote unquote" fake news. Not only here in the U.S. too, even, but in India, it was felt that a lot of "quote unquote" fake news altered the path of elections in India because it was so widespread. The availability of credibility and information in India is not like here in the U.S. So people were more apt to believe what they read, and I mean it's important to make sure that people know the truth about things, but also again another point of who gets to be the purveyors of truth? Who gets to be the deciders of what truth is? And that's what I'm concerned about in these, not only in these markets, but this sort of mindset spreading to America.
No, that's definitely true, man. I feel like there are, again, other corporations, specifically mass media, that might have it's almost obvious now, they have a slight right or left lean in what they say and how they portray it to the public. Now, so when you talk about purveyors of the truth, it's always going to be people in power trying to convince the masses that their side is right. So then that's why I think public confidence in things like mass media is declining, and people are looking towards alternative forms of media on the internet and elsewhere. And I guess like what you were saying, the mass amount of uninformed people that this information is getting out to and possibly influencing their decisions, I think we don't really understand the full impact of it yet. It's fairly new in our society.
Right. Another way to look at this is corporation versus the individual. Now, I personally love PewDiePie. I think he's a good dude. But he'll tell you himself that he doesn't think he deserves to be number one. That he jokes about him not being original all the time, as entertaining as he is. But regardless, I still look at this campaign to keep PewDiePie at number one. I see as a strike back against corporations and corporate-driven tactics in media, which is what T-Series is. T-Series is no one individual; it's a corporation, and the individual is what is most important to me. Individual success and rights, because it doesn't get more thorough than that. It doesn't get more deserving than that. To look at everything and everyone as individuals. And corporations, I don't want to say corporations are evil or anything. A lot of innovation has come out of, obviously, companies and entrepreneurs, but that's what's more important. Like, even then, what's more important to me is the entrepreneur, the individual. Because once you get into corporations, you get into bureaucracy. Greed is a lot easier to develop rather than the founder's initial drive and beliefs and goals. And I see this campaign as having that undertone, even when it's played up for a lot of laughs. Can't play it on here. It has cussing in it, but there's Pewdiepie had a diss track, which was hilarious. And I see it more as that. And it's definitely not a West versus India thing. Pewdiepie just had a charity stream the other day where he raised $250,000 for impoverished kids in India. And even though that has the same consequence as Google funding infrastructure in India and PewDiePie gaining charity for Indian kids, I don't think they're coming from the same emotion, the same source, and the same motivations.
Yeah, I feel like speaking of the dichotomy between the individual and quote-unquote corporations, there seems to be on the one hand an honesty, and on the other dishonesty. There are underhanded tactics of getting people's attention, getting people's money, and I think that's become the tried and true method that a lot of corporations use in order to make money. If you deceive people, or if you offer them something, a palliative, then they're going to flock to that. It's a comfort, and people make money off of comfort. And what I think that the whole PewDiePie movement and the people behind him, it's of course I think an expression of honesty, of honestly liking a person and their character, and then wanting that to be, and then associating that with charity, I think is like the next best step that they could use, because it's not profit driven. It's not based on the emotion of getting more. A business needs to make money, needs to create a profit to survive. And so the motivations behind these two groups is very different, and I think will lead to very different results.
All right, everyone, brofist. All right, moving on to this week's weekly wrap-up. Weekly wrap-up. George H.W. Bush unfortunately passed away. 41st president. From all accounts, a good person. He only served one term. Seen as an ineffective president. Back in the 90s, he was looked at as weak. And that's what I wanted to get to. I'd rather keep it just about remembering HW, but the media is interested in that, so that's why I'm bringing this up. I feel that what the media praises H.W. Bush for now is what they bashed him on back in the 90s, and that was his personality. People looked at him as soft and weak. If you remember, he famously said in a speech, "Read my lips, no new taxes," and we all know that didn't happen. Nowadays, now the media is presenting him as civil and gentle in a positive light, and I don't think they're entirely wrong to say that, but I don't feel like it's coming from an organic source. I feel that they're only painting him in such a positive light. The same thing with when John McCain passed away, our senator, who I actually worked for. I think he was a wonderful man. I had a few conversations with him. We spoke in the bathroom. I went in there to wash my hands because I was an intern, and he was already in there. And I'm a very clean person. I wash my hands before and after Don't need any more details than that. I just wash my hands before and after. And so I was washing my hands, and he comes up to wash his hands, and then he just starts asking me questions about how it's going, being an intern. And then he looks at me and grabs my shoulders and says, "Son, you're part of my Navy now." And and he walked me back to the office when I hadn't even gone to the bathroom. I had to run back after that. But, anyways, the point being, Senator McCain was a nice man, but that's not how he was presented by some of the media back when he was running against Barack Obama. And I feel like it's the same here with H.W. Bush. And the reason they're painting them in such positive light when they've passed away is that so that they could juxtapose them with President Trump. Obviously, a lot of the media does not like President Trump. I don't think that's controversial for me to say. Because as much as they didn't like HW and McCain, they hate Trump 10 times more. What do you think about that, Jose?
Oh, they sure do. No doubt about that, man. So if they... What I think the tactic that is being employed here by the media is if they can liken HW to a conservative value or a conservative value set that does not look like what Trump's values are, they think that'll turn potential voters away from Trump towards what they could hopefully perceive to be someone challenging him come the next election. I mean, it's a smart tactic. And the Republicans can't really, take the opposite stance on HW because then they'll be seen as insensitive, and they wouldn't go against one of their own Republicans anyways. So it's an interesting play here by what I would think to be more left-leaning publications, but I think we'll be able to see the effects later on when the elections come closer.
Right. What's most important is rest in peace, President Bush. Moving on to something not exactly political, just something that was cooking up in my head. Is the effect of laws on human behavior. Now, I'm certainly not an anarchist, and obviously, I think government is necessary to a certain degree. We can argue or debate on how much government there should be and what their responsibilities should be. But what most people agree on is that they should protect the people of the society. And that's where laws come into play. And obviously laws prevent people from acting in evil ways who have a pre-conventional set of ethics, meaning that they do or don't do something based on reward and punishment. Rather than it's right or wrong, any moral sense, it's just, am I going to make good out of this, yes or no? And that's what makes them decide to do something. But I was also thinking about, what if laws actually enable some evil in the world? Just the legal kind of evil. It enables people to go around as being really unhappy people and who are looking to make other people unhappy because they know that the law will protect them from potentially dangerous people that they've upset. And I was just wondering that I definitely think laws are a net positive, obviously, but it was just an interesting thought of how laws could actually enable some negativity in the world. And what do you think?
Well, man, I mean, we've all heard of some examples of some laws being used, or loopholes in laws being used to screw people over. And, sometimes we see things where, say a false accusation is made and it can completely ruin somebody's life forever. There's no coming back from some accusations. But I'm not sure that the laws, people, I'm thinking of the Garden of Eden where, God said, don't eat this fruit, and then, just the temptation. So I think perhaps the temptation of having a law set out. There's something, I think, in everybody that wants to break a certain rule, and so maybe stemming from that basic human nature of wanting to break a rule, there are some people who research laws and look into laws and eventually find a way to use that to hurt people that they don't like. But people could say they're always going to be like that, regardless of how many laws or how much laws or regulations or how little we have. But what do you think, Kyle? What do you think about the basic need to break laws and rules?
There will be people that always do it. I think most people do it because they feel like it gains them some kind of benefit. I don't think the majority of people do it because they're just evil. I mean, that's some people. But that's what I was wondering is without those laws and that structure, how would people's behavior change? Funny thing is I really don't think the end result would be the purge. You look at the purge and everyone's just killing each other and wearing masks and doing weird satanic stuff, and I'm just thinking like man, why aren't these people going out and stealing Samsung TVs and going to just KFC and picking up some chicken or something, some free chicken? Everyone's just looking to kill each other. Like, really? Like, are we so messed up as a species that as soon as there's the possibility of no consequences, and it's not even that, because it's people fight back. There are weapons available, but like we just start killing each other. I don't think that's true.
People get a bad rap. Most of us are all right. Most of us wouldn't try to kill people if no rules were there. I think most people are just concerned with self-preservation. I mean, I think there's a select few that really want to go out there and hurt people, and that they're most of the time kept in check by laws, and watchful, a watchful populace. But yeah, man, I don't think we'd be like that. People would rather steal stuff and get away with something, gain something, rather than take something away. Usually, I think. What do you think, Kyle?
Right, but I'm just wondering, like, with total anarchy, and there's also there's different kinds of anarchy. There's capitalist anarchy where there's no government, there's just corporations. Now that'd be interesting. But I'm talking about total anarchy. Like, how many people's primal urges would be unleashed, and how many people would actually pull back out of fear of everyone else? It's fascinating to me how, without the structure of society and its rules, like, how tribal would we get? Would humanity mostly be structure the same? Because I feel like without an official government, communities would still form their own governments. Like, there wouldn't be a U.S. government, but there might be a formed government over a couple years after this happening. There might be a government of Tempe that started off all volunteers and then just formed their own little government anyways. It's just a fascinating thought to me. If there was just a start over button, like we had everything as of now. It's just structure, just gone. There's no more borders. There's no more U.S. government, no military. Just people and their formations. Like, what would happen? It's just a fascinating thought to me.
Well, I think we'd all congregate again towards resources, just basic needs for survival, and then we just go along the same path as before. The competent people would get pushed to the top, and they'd lead, and eventually, fights will be fought over differing ideologies. People from different areas will have different ideas about what's right and what's wrong, and that's where laws come in, and that's where, different powers will come to a clash, and then borders will be made from that, and structure will be made again into the world, and then it'll just keep happening. I mean, the Roman Empire and the Egyptian were not the only cases of great empires that rose and fell. History is littered with them, and it's in all likelihood in the future something like that might happen to us. And I think it's an interesting thing to think about how we behave in the absence of all that we take for granted. here and now. What do you think, Kyle?
Right. I think without that, I think the world becomes quick to privatize. I think I'm not some dystopia where like Apple forms some like militia and takes over, though that could happen. I mean, but like the invisible hand of the market would force some structure back. Like you could see firefighters like forming. I mean, they're doing the same jobs. They're just saying, in order for us to provide our services, now you directly have to pay us. Same thing with police, though. I think there'd be a lot. Would police be more or less corrupt? Like they could like this is all based on morals. If they're good moral people, it wouldn't happen. But they could form more gang-like because they could have the power, or they could actually be even better at their jobs because now they don't have the government to fall back on, because now the government isn't there protecting them. Like if a cop were to do wrong now, like you have to go through the system, and the system may or may not protect them. But in this case, if they are privatized, like there's nothing stopping them from someone and someone attacking them other than them protecting themselves. Like just the idea of everything being privatized and everything potentially being tribal, while still having some form of structure, just mixes the old marbles in my brain.
Yeah, I mean, the structure that what I'm hearing, what I'm imagining in my head is something like the Wild West. You know, colonizers. You know, there's a basic form of government. You know, there's the sheriff of the town who watches over and is accountable to the people that he watches over. And I think people would trust. I mean, people would have, you know, in our little tribal groups, we would eventually choose someone that would be seen as a protector. And being a protector of other people, you have a certain responsibility, and people will hold you to that. So whether or not it'll be more or less corrupt, I think perhaps in the beginning it'll be harder to be corrupt because of the lack of bureaucracy and the fact that if you do something wrong, it's directly accountable to you. So I think naturally we'd be a little more reserved and traditional, and I think honest. And I think as things grow more complex, that's when things like corruption, I think, seep into organizations. I think that's just a natural end result. But I think, again, laws would be put into place and certain measures would have to be taken in order to curb, I think, mankind's eventual tendency to err in that direction.
Right. Well, we're going to be wrapping it up here on Bread and Circus. He's Bread, I'm Circus. Though we got neither the substance nor the entertainment. And that's a good night from Phoenix, Arizona.